Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by Alyssa Wright, founder and principal consultant at Wright Collective. Having spent time as a human rights activist in Eastern Europe and Africa, Alyssa brings over a decade of experience in international philanthropy to Wright Collective. With a background in community organizing and the arts, Alyssa leads the collective with skill, creativity, and passion. And as an accompanied facilitator, consultant, and coach, she builds new revenue streams, shifts cultural perspectives, and inspires people to believe that change is possible no matter what. So we are in for such a treat and such a delight with Alyssa. And with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing and pass it to you, Alyssa.
Thanks, Ashley. So good to be with you and so good to be with everybody in the Bonterra community today. It's always fun seeing all the locations roll in from the chat. Ashley and I were just chatting about our love for Chicago, and nice to see some folks from Maine in there and Southern New Hampshire. And so I am so excited to be with you all today. I am up here in Southern Maine on beautiful Wabanaki lands, tuning in to have this conversation that feels relevant, timely, intense. And also to, keep our eyes on the prize of the long-term sustainable systems change that I think we all are working towards in our different capacities. So I know Ashley shared my bio, but we're also much more than a bio. And so I just want to invite in today too that I'm a fundraiser who's fundraised um, up and down and all around and in and out of a lot of tricky situations. I fundraised in West Africa during the Ebola crisis. I fundraised now through two Trump administrations. I've fundraised through my career started in the first economic recession in 2008 and 2009. I fundraised through Hurricane Sandy and through some really intense leadership transitions from founder-led organizations to first-time EDs. So what I want to kind of drop in today is the importance of your own self-awareness, how you take care of yourself through these moments of funding fragility, and stay in the good fight for the long term as a nonprofit leader or as somebody who loves a nonprofit or is really committed to a specific cause. So thank you for being here today and investing both in your organization, but also your very important self, because we need to stay in this work as individuals too and wrap ourselves up in community. So to get today started, I'm going to share my screen and get us going on today's topic, responding to federal funding uncertainty. So I'll start today off with just a little story. So I think it was back in March, we found out that three of our clients were going to be losing about seven figures of funding from federal grants that they received on an ongoing basis. One was a Meals on Wheels program for a statewide Meals on Wheels program, feeding elder adults in their region and helping combat the loneliness epidemic amongst them. The other was a library ecosystem that we were serving, and they were specifically serving a lot of immigrant and refugee and asylum seekers in that community with early literacy tools, workforce development support, many things. And the third was another food security program that was mostly focused on supporting children and single parents and folks in the unhoused community in the summer months. So I'll tell you firsthand, I'm not the facilitator or the coach that's going to show up today and tell you that I don't have firsthand experience. Literally, I am in these conversations every single day, as many of you are. And so I'm holding that container while also trying to remind myself of how important it is for us to, again, try to stick to a long-term vision of what we're doing over the next decade together in this work, how we're focused on generational change, what we're doing for the young people that are coming up behind us, and also being very mindful of the fact that it is also a very scary, volatile time, and there's a lot of harm and hurt and danger that is in the face of so many communities and individuals that we love. So I want to kind of embrace today as we go through this conversation, knowing that the relationships that you might build right now, while they might not result in a ton of capital or a ton of resources, they are the relationships that the next time you go through a crisis moment or a really tumultuous time, they'll be the ones that show up for you. And I have a few examples of that peppered throughout today's presentation of companies and individuals and family funds that relationships were built during the COVID-19 pandemic. And right now, when they're facing some of the same fragilities or fears as organizations, those are the entities showing up. Not always to fill the entire funding gap, because no one can replace what's exactly is happening at the federal level. But they're there to be beside you, to help you make decisions, and to give the most capital that they can in the way that's flexible and supportive to you. So let's get started on this conversation. For anyone who's ever done a webinar with me before, I'm wearing my Fearless Fundraiser t-shirt today because I felt like I would just bring a little bit of that energy here. Um, I still believe in abundance. We actually had a client this morning who got an email about a 7-figure grant that is coming through over the next 2 years for them. And while it was, about 6 to 9 months work of relationship building and due diligence work, I'm still seeing the resource flow out there. So I want to remind you that we, as nonprofit leaders and folks in philanthropy, we function in a billion-dollar ecosystem. Billions and billions of dollars flow through our sector on an annual basis. And so I just like to remind folks of that when you're struggling to figure out where the next 5 grand or 10 grand is coming from. I just think it's really important to drop in that reminder that this is a billion-dollar ecosystem, and there are billions of dollars that are set aside for charitable giving that you can find ways to get access to. So I still want you in this moment to try to think abundant. Meet the reality of the moment, but also don't be afraid to ask for that extra zero. Don't be afraid to have that conversation about multi-year giving. And don't be afraid to say that it's important for new collaborations or partnerships or things to emerge in this moment so that you can really drive change. The other sort of mindset shift that I want to drop in, and again, for folks who maybe done trainings with me before, or who are kind of maybe you're thinking about your role in philanthropy and fund development. Maybe you're a board member who's always been the one that heads up the development committee and you're joining today. Maybe you're the head of a corporate philanthropy program and you are trying to really understand how you sort of build the bridge between the nonprofits and the need and the executive leadership within your company and the philanthropists that they are. I want to drop in this idea that if you have the lived experience of an issue that we are facing in these times, maybe you're a person who's been a victim of domestic violence. Maybe you are an individual who have an experience of being unhoused or food insecure. If you have that lived experience, now is the time to tell yourself that you're not just a fundraiser or ambassador for that cause. You are an advisor to philanthropy, to step in where people are moving money, channeling resources, and let them know what those communities need and how they talk to people at the root cause of the issue, and really on the front lines of solving those problems and being in community. So for many fundraisers that I work with, this can be a hard shift. Like definitely in the beginning, many fundraisers feel like, oh, I'm just, I run a gala and I write some grants. And I want to empower you today to think about yourself as a philanthropic advisor and leader in our times. You are not just writing grants. You are communicating what impact metrics and stories are most important for us to write about our society right now and to get resourced. That's profound work. So I just want to drop in a quick check-in that if you've never thought of yourself up until this moment in this landscape, as you go out to try and mobilize more resources as a philanthropic advisor, please think of yourself as one and really think about yourself even in a leadership identity within your organization. Yes, you will have your executive director and your board chairs and your grant makers that you will be accountable to and work with. But the folks in development and fundraising, we're leaders too. And those of us that are mobilizing resources in our communities, whether it's again, through the companies that we work at, through different volunteerism that we do, through family foundations or funds that we might steward or support. I really want you to think about what your lived experience is during this moment, and how you can be more of an advisor and really come out thinking about yourself being part of a larger philanthropic conversation and not just always asking for um, time, talent, treasure, ties, testimony, all the T's. I also want to invite in, because I know we have some funders on the call today. I have many colleagues that are program officers at different foundations throughout the country, who are trustees on their family foundations boards. And I sometimes find that, again, because we talk about this billion-dollar ecosystem, they're still moving millions of dollars around and they still don't feel like they're a change maker. they still don't embrace that identity of being an activist or a humanitarian or a change maker. They either see it as a job or a part of their family practice. And so I also just want to welcome in the importance of your thought leadership, your ambassadorship, you getting the word out during this moment that we're in. And I'll talk a little bit more in the next few slides about the messages that we should be sharing, and who should be sharing them. But I also think that, philanthropic influence and your influence right now as a leader in those spaces is really important. So if up until this moment you've kind of been quietly doing things over Zoom calls and in the boardroom, maybe now is the time to write that op-ed or to go start knocking on doors on behalf of the causes that you care about. It's really important right now that we are advocating for, and being as loud and proud as we can, to ensure that the funding that we need is secured for the communities that we care about. The other thing that I want to drop in, and I very much see myself as a philanthropic activist. Like I'm out to move the money. I've moved a little over $200 million in my career in community with the organizations that I support, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And one of the things that I've learned working mostly in the private philanthropy space and having partnerships with government entities is that for individuals with wealth, we are living in a time, by the way, mind you, of incredible income inequality. Most of my conversations on a weekly basis are about mobilizing monthly giving, getting people to give 5, 10, $25 a month to causes, and then talking about 6 and 7 figure multi-year grants with multimillionaires and billionaires, working with high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. And so I think part of what we need to acknowledge in this time is that even when the market is up and down, the news is chaotic, federal funding feels uncertain, there are always people in your community, in your cities, in your towns that will have more than they need. And so I'm really grateful and excited about movements like Half My DAF, Half My Donor Advised Fund, and others that are out there that are really encouraging people who have wealth, to not store it away, but to put it out as a vehicle to drive change right now in their communities, to give those resources away to mobilize, as much as they possibly can in their lifetime. And so I just want to name that sometimes folks will come to these trainings and you're afraid to ask, right? You're like, oh, I don't know, the market's down right now, and they have 2 kids going to college, and they have a parent who's ill. I think it's important always to build right relationship, but also we should always be asking. We should always be inviting people to fund, the world that we know is possible and to ask for what our communities need. So I just wanted to give you, I'll talk a little bit today about, community foundations as a place to turn to in this moment of, federal funding uncertainty. But I always just like to show some numbers. So play with me for a minute. We're going to do some math. um, so this is a community foundation here in New England whose, assets in 2024 were around about 1.2 billion, the community foundation's assets. And so if those were invested at just a federal short-term rate, which was mentioned in several articles, that they published around their annual report, of 4.23%, that means that in that calendar year, that community foundation on those assets through their investment committee and the decisions that they made probably got about 50 to $51 million in interest. So I name that because I think it's important when you're turning to your community foundations and, they're doing their own grant cycles, they host their donor advised funds, that you're aware of the fact that they are also making investments, that they are also an institution that is accruing wealth, and you can ask them for more. Sometimes I see folks be like, oh, we got that $25,000 grant and, they awarded us, we got an award at that ceremony, but, I'm just going to kind of wait and see, if they let us apply again next year. No, go and ask about their donor advised funds and ask them about other vehicles for giving. Ask them if they're interested in doing other types of capital for you right now. Maybe it's your first recoverable grant or a short-term bridge loan to help your program survive. I'll talk a little bit more today about integrated capital and the other options you have beyond philanthropy. But I just wanted to name this because I think it's important for you to know how much money moves and how much we often as nonprofits get access to. Because again, we have the attitude of gratitude, right? Like raise your hand if you've sat in a room and written, I don't know what the right word is, but that's because I haven't had enough coffee. Your 500 thank you cards, right? We are so grateful for everything we get. But what I'm asking us in this moment is to not be afraid to challenge some of these systems as well to see if they can do more and be more for the causes and communities we care about. So I think it's really important that you know some of these numbers, that you're aware of some of this. And then also the other thing I thought just to share, because it's interesting, is that in addition to the interest that they accrued on their investment accounts, they also raised 153 million that year to do additional grant making. So just be mindful that many of the folks in the communities surrounding you, the community foundations, the financial services firms, the family foundations, the family funds, again, they are accruing wealth while also giving it away as stewards. And so I feel really grateful and excited by the family funds that I've seen who aren't just doing a 5% or a 10% drawdown. Some of them right now are doing a 25% drawdown because they know they have a lot of resource. So those are things to ask, things to be aware of. In this federal funding landscape, it's important that we know what we need, but we also ask for exactly what we need because you never know who's listening. So let's talk a little bit about donor communications. I'll be honest with you, I definitely had a moment this spring where I was like, I'm not talking to anybody because I don't know what's going on. I have no clue what's happening. Do you know what's happening? Where are we at? How are y'all doing? So I definitely had a moment where I had to like check in with myself and say, I'm not communicating right now because I'm not really sure what I'm communicating or how to communicate. Um, and then I had a donor that reached out to me. He's given to a couple of our projects over the years. And he reached out to me and he said, Hey, he goes, I know I'm not a big donor. He was like, I give 5, 10, $20,000 here and there. He's like, but I'm surprised that I haven't heard from any organizations that I give to in like the last couple of months. And this was probably around the beginning of April that I heard from him. And so I said, well, what would you want to hear? And he said, I just want to make sure they're okay. I want to find out what they might be facing. And then I just want to get a sense of like, how can I volunteer or is my 10 grand even helpful right now? Well, again, by a raise of hands or comments in the chat, I'm sure that 10 grand would be very helpful to many of you right now. But sometimes people don't know that their gift or their amount that they give is meaningful to you. So I just want to drop in the importance of, and again, if you've done other trainings with me before, spending time with donors. So important. Um, so I just want to name that while you don't have to go to them with the exact scenario of what's happening right now, or a perfectly baked pivot plan. I do think it's really important that you are communicating with them about what you might be facing, what the facts of the moment are, really sticking to the facts of the moment, not what might happen or what may happen, but touching upon some of that, but saying exactly here's where we are today. For the library ecosystem that we work in, we were staying in touch with donors, and then we got to a point where we said it's time to meet with them and let them know that we're laying off 35 staff because we have to. So when decisions are made, it is also important to communicate so they aren't surprised by some of the potential scenarios. But I think not giving into the chaos, being really clear in your communications, sticking to the facts of the moment, super important right now. I also think preparing your own voice as an organization, right? So right now I'm seeing a lot of organizations that are getting more involved in advocacy and policy work because they are worried about the ecosystems that they operate in. We even had a small giving circle. It's a nonprofit giving circle that serves to just provide some direct service grants in the community or direct cash grants to folks in the community when they have an unexpected bill to pay. They're kind of like one of those organizations that's the glue for families that don't get the traditional services necessarily. They're in that income tier where they miss out on some of the food stamp SNAP benefits things, but also they don't make enough to cover some gaps. So this particular giving circle decided to start doing more advocacy around food security in the area with some of the bigger organizations, some of the larger food banks and those folks, because the population they serve does not have access to food already and could sink down into even a more difficult economic situation given the current landscape. So get involved in advocacy or have that conversation at the board level. If you don't know how you currently get involved in policy and advocacy work as a small organization, I would have that conversation and maybe even meet with the local partners in your state, the ACLU, if there's civil rights violations or human rights violations you're concerned about, Citizens Climate Lobby, if you're working on environmental issues or climate justice issues, the Human Rights Campaign, if you're particularly serving or supporting the LGBTQA community right now, if you're concerned about different Medicare or healthcare situations, the American Medical Association, just be aware of what they're doing. And definitely have that conversation at the board level about when would we go and testify at the state house? What difference would it make? How and why? I've seen small grassroots organizations put out pledges or petitions just to get people to sign, to show a density of folks that are calling and caring to to senators and Congress folks about certain things. So I just want to encourage you in these times to have that conversation at the board level, agree on what your role is around it. And then for those of you that are funders on this call, how are you as funders supporting that work? We work with an asset management firm that actually shut down their offices on a Friday and had everybody spend the day calling all of their political leaders with a script from one of the organizations that they were working with because they're really concerned about potential Medicare and Medicaid cuts. So again, there are ways that also you as an employee base can mobilize around these issues, and I think that's extremely important. So think about your donor communications right now. I'm excited to share from here in New England in our portfolio of work some of that commentary. So we work with one of the food pantries in southern New Hampshire, in the seacoast of Maine. They went from serving about 500 folks a few years ago to now serving 500 folks a month, to serving over 10,000 people a month in our region. So an incredible increase. And so I just think this is a really good example. I put the link there. Ann Hayes, their executive director, did a really great job of that, sticking to the facts and being clear on what's happening in the moment. So if you want to head to that CBS News link, I think it's important because she talked on the actual impact of the cuts. But she also reflected on what are some of the potential things down the pipeline and how we need people to be involved with, again, not just your treasure, while we do need to raise money, but also your time, talent, and testimony. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to go and jump on to CBS News and look at this link, I'm happy to share this slide deck afterwards with Ashley, and you can take a look at this. So I think it's a time to reimagine a couple of systems. How do you all feel about that? So why don't we rethink fundraising and development? So here are a couple of things that I want to pop into your consciousness beyond today as you sort of look at your development program, look at your fundraising activity, and think about what can we do differently. The first thing I want to name is investing in your own personal or your organization's financial acumen is so important right now. Money is available to you. It is moving through insurance companies and donor advised funds and community foundations and real estate in so many ways that we often don't realize. And on the crux of the generational wealth transfer, as a generation of folks pass on, we're going to see so many different opportunities around. I think it's, what is it, like a ridiculous $1 trillion number now, 27 trillion. Will go from the boomer generation to Gen X and millennials. As we watch that happen, those dollars could go to your organization, especially if those folks do not have children or relatives that they set as part of the inheritance, especially if they have volunteerism in the later stages of their life as part of your cause, or those dollars will go to the government. And so I think right now is a great time to talk about how those dollars could be redirected to your organization, but also to understand your organization's own financial savviness and your business development planning, so to speak, and what's possible for you. So I do think it's really important for you to understand all the different vehicles accessible to you beyond philanthropy. If you've never talked about program-related investments or recoverable grants or bridge loans or some of those tax credit programs, if you haven't explored that in the past, now is the time to explore it, because the traditional model of the galas and the year-end appeal letters and the sponsoring of events and things like that, it's still going to exist, but it's only a very small portion of what is accessible to you as an organization. So really think about right now investing in your own personal or your organization's financial acumen. That being said, if there are corporate folks on the call, corporate funders, if you have grantees, I would offer them free workshops on this. If this is a service you can provide, help them understand how to make a better budget, help them to understand different, mechanisms of the market and investment strategies they could have. I've seen organizations have a legacy gift of, six figures come in, and within a few years, they've turned it into a $2 or $3 million endowment or endowed fund. So just be really mindful of, the ways that you could also support organizations with financial literacy classes or budgeting classes. It's a great way to give back right now. Diversify those revenue streams. One of my favorite clients right now is actually it's a doula network. And this network of doulas is creating their own certification program that people will pay to become a certified doula in their model. They are generating their own revenue through their own certification program. Think about ways you could do that too. Certification programs, curriculum development. If you put out a playbook every year of you know, uh, research and data and information like that, make it downloadable for $199, right? Like think about ways that you can sort of monetize some of the elements of the work that you're doing. Um, and also diversify your revenue streams in terms of seeing where your fragility is. If you're in a moment right now where you are very fragile because you were 80, 90% government funded, now is the time, although to be honest, it probably was a couple of years ago, for you to think about diversifying your funding. Kind of a hallmark or a benchmark in the nonprofit sector is that you never want to have more than 40% of your budget coming from one source. So it's just really important that, that creates a very fragile environment for you if 40 or 60 or 80% of your budget is government funding. It's important to diversify over time to increase those buckets as much as you can. So just something to think about. Spend time with your donors. Ask for more and ask for different. I had a conversation with a funder a few weeks ago who said they didn't have any more philanthropy to give, but they could do a 1% bridge loan for an organization to get them through the next 2 years with a project that they had already started and lost federal funding for. So they know they're never going to stop fundraising. They're going to continue to fundraise. They're going to continue to lobby and advocate as they can for the funding to get back into the state and federal budgets to support the project that they were launching in the community they serve. But this funder can cover the gap, right? So I just think it's really important to spend time with donors, to ask them to do more and to ask them for different. Remember, maybe you have a funder who every year gives you that $20,000 check, but you've never asked them for 50,000 over 2 years or 75,000 over 2 years. Maybe now is the time to stretch the gift and to start making more multi-year pledges from your different donorships. So something to think about. I love me a funder briefing. We host a lot of funder briefings with our partners. We do them virtually. We also do them in person as like an open house. We just invite all of our funders, all the program officers from all the foundations that support us, all of our major donors that give $1,000 or more a year. And we basically do it as like a state of the state. Come and hear about our organization, the issues that we're facing, and feel free to ask questions. Some people, a lot of our clients will do this type of briefing around the time that they launch their impact report or their annual report. It's a nice time to put that mailer out, show everyone the things that you've worked on, but also have a virtual seminar where they can ask Q&A with your program director, excuse me, or with your executive director. I also think this is a really important time. Again, raise of hands are in the chat. How many of you learned the importance of collaboration with other nonprofit leaders and organizations during the pandemic? So important. We have to work together. All boats rise. So invite other ecosystem partners. If there's 10 of you in a region working on workforce housing and affordable housing, host a panel together and invite a bunch of the funders in the area because you know that you're all funded by the same people. I think that type of leadership went a really long way during the COVID pandemic. I saw a lot of folks, especially community foundations, say, I'm so glad to see that they're all talking. Like that's what we want to see happening. And so it just increases your trust with those funders and with other folks that are, again, hoping to do what we all hope nonprofits do, which is eradicate an issue or refine a system, right? So just things to think about. New partnerships. So again, for some of the funders on the call, I think two of the things that I often see funders gravitate towards supporting with is pro bono services and support, like volunteerism. So the time and talent piece, right? We'll help you make a website. We'll have our staff come and volunteer with you. Again, even to my earlier comment on this slide, like we will host a financial workshop for you to help you with your budgeting process. Then there's the treasure, right? So then you make the grants, you give the donations, but the testimony and ties is really important right now too. And so that's the one that I think sometimes is the scariest. It's where we put our voice and our identity and our bodies on the line for the causes that we care about, and the people that we love. And so I just name that because I do think it's really important if there are ways right now that your company or your executive leadership can put out op-eds, can join councils that are doing larger scale advocacy and policy work. I've seen some incredible leaders of hospitality companies and food service companies saying really brave things right now about the amount of money being cut to feed mostly single parents and children. Like it's ridiculous, right? We all know that. So I just want to say that sometimes the scariest thing is sharing your voice and also sharing your connections. Our social capital is everything. But if right now is the time to build a relationship for one of the organizations that you steward, please do so. And also do so politically or socially in a way that makes sense. We've had clients who, for the first time, have introduced social influencers or executive leaders within the company, local politicians. Now is the time to really build those relationships and help people advocate in a way that's dynamic. If you haven't had that 30-minute cup of coffee, or if you haven't prioritized that conversation with the executive leader within your company who could give the approval for you to do that, get that celebrity influencer, politician person that you think could really serve your grantees in conversation with them. So just things to think about as well. And then take a polycapital approach. What does she mean by polycapital? We live, I think we live very often as fund development folks, which I'm assuming the majority of you are today. You're all in the fundraising seat, in the financial capital place, right? With money. Then we move into the social capital space, right? Connections. We're always trying to build our social capital up, because those connections lead to resource flow and partnership. What I want to welcome in at this time is just the idea of really taking a polycapital approach and thinking about all of these things that get us through tough times. I have tuned into so many people right now for their cultural capital and their intellectual capital. I'm like, we need new ideas and we need to figure out how to be in community. Like SOS, help us. So I just want to name that while you're thinking about ways to invite people in to your cause right now, to get them involved in your work in new and different ways, think about what's needed. Do you need that experiential capital? Do you need people who've done this before, who've lived this before? I had a woman reach out to us who she lived through several different uh, fascist regimes in her time and dictatorships in Eastern Europe. And she reached out actually and said, I just want to open myself up as an advisor right now because I ran 3 small peacekeeping NGOs in Belgrade and in Serbia, and a couple other countries in the Middle East, during different times in Eastern Europe during different times. So I just want to name that experience right now, if you're really feeling, your community is extremely oppressed right now in this moment and you're feeling the strong impact, that experiential capital can go a long way. I also want to welcome in the idea of spiritual and cultural capital, however you fit into that conversation and what's appropriate for your organization's culture. But my goodness, we have a couple of there's a couple of women's giving circles one of our clients has, and they are writing letters to the volunteers every month, thanking the volunteers for what they're doing because they're covering some of the staffing gaps that we had to cut staff and they could not do. So they are literally, the folks working for free to cover staffing gaps. And thank goodness that there's that group of women who are just writing handwritten cards and postcards and sending stickers and showing up with free pizza. Some of that right now might be the thing that you can contribute, and it makes a difference. And then I also want to just call in here with the intellectual capital. So important. If you've built businesses, if you've scaled initiatives, if you have tech savviness within your team, again, for maybe some of the corporate funders joining today, I think it's so important to think about like, okay, maybe we can, help them build an app to do this faster. We could work on that with them over the summer. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to come in and look at their strategic plan and give them a couple of pivot points. Um, I just think that's also really important. And also, the benefit or the gift and the curse right now is we all integrate AI into our work. We actually had a company that came in and did some AI training, and our development and marketing team at one of our organizations, they're a 3-person team. They're working like 6 people now, and it's pretty profound. So don't forget, there's all of these things that you have to contribute. And so I do think it's really important. I'll name material capital too, because I think having space to organize, to host fundraising events, to convene is also super important. If your company can offer up a boardroom or can offer up a space for an event, if your family foundation can do that, please do that too. It's like a great, amazing thing for, as somebody who started in domestic violence shelter programs that were in church basements, and we like had to put 30 people in one small room with like free pizza to talk about our mission. Um, I really appreciate space, let me tell you. So I wanted to share one corporate partnership success story. We work with an organization over the years called Half the Story. They are doing mental health awareness and training to support young people in becoming more digitally well, which is really important in this chaotic, noisy time. And they have a partnership with Pinterest that they've forged over the last few years. So I'll share with you a few of the ways Pinterest is supporting them right now in 2025 and why I think it's important. The first is Pinterest is leveraging their platform. So they are constantly sharing Half the Story's sort of mental health tips and digital wellness tips to generate awareness for the organization, but to also be an extension of the mission. So you might have something more on a local scale. Maybe it's a local blog in the newspaper, or it's a city website where people write about the newest hot restaurant or food truck to go to. Leverage those platforms, build some partnerships with those. It's a great opportunity. They are also they've invited the CEO of Half the Story to speak at many company gatherings, even if it's just to come and do the opening and share wellness tips or mental health tips, or to invite people into a guided meditation, or to share a handout about ways that they can get involved with the movement. So again, inviting, those speaking opportunities are really important, and being able to connect with other leaders in the company. Because especially as you get higher up in the company, those folks have stock and assets and their own philanthropic practice. It just helps with the building right relationship if you can get those speaking opportunities. They're funding 2 initiatives within Half the Story, or it might be 3, but I think it's 2, but they're promoting all of them. So again, you might have a funder right now that's just supporting, let's say your program that's helping seniors and elder adults. But you might say to them, hey, we also do stuff for working parents and for youth. Are you okay with promoting all of our programs right now, even though this is the only one you fund? Yeah, maybe they would be. So just again, now is a time for them to uplift your whole mission and vision, and not just maybe the program that they serve. They also Pinterest engaged a tech partner that they had. So they had a vendor that was a tech partner, and they basically gave them the ability to support some of those smaller organizations in incubating and hosting fundraising and support sessions. So again, you might be a company that's joining today that has a tech partner who could really quickly just start putting some of these support sessions or doing small fundraising mechanisms out for Half the Story. And this is another place where I'd encourage you to get in touch with Bonterra to learn more about how these technologies can be integrated, because I think it's really important for any of your funding partners to know how to leverage your tech well, and all the different ways that they can be a part of crowdfunding and running events and whatnot. But I would say right now that what Larissa May Lars, the CEO of Half the Story, shared with me that was the most important is that all of their approaches right now seek to foster collaboration and to offer full unconditional support to Half the Story. So I do think it's really important to check in again, even if one of the things you leave with today is just talking once a month with corporate funders, or if you're a corporate funder, talking, reaching out once a month or once every other month to talk to all of your grantees. Find those 15, 20-minute windows of time to check in and say, how can we help you? Who else are you working with? And to foster more collaboration and sharing. So I hope this is a helpful example for you to hear today. And I hope that you follow half the story and Pinterest around this journey that they're on as an example. So community foundations, again, I can't name enough right now how incredible it's been to see the community foundations, particularly the Boston Foundation, just recently did a rapid response round of grant making and has been offering a variety of different supports to their grantees throughout the greater Boston area. I think I saw a community foundation in New Haven, Connecticut, that recently also put out a rapid response fund. Stay in touch with your local community foundation. If you do not have a relationship with them right now, go get one. Just call them up, tell them what you're doing, ask for a cup of coffee, ask to say what's the right way to be in relationship to you. If you do have a relationship with them, send them a monthly update or a quarterly update. Again, to go back to that donor experience I shared early on, he hadn't heard anything, and he has a donor advised fund at the local community foundation. And this organization is also a grantee of the Community Foundation's grant making program. So just be mindful that, folks are wanting to hear from you. If you are, struggling to find that time or capacity, invite a board member in to help you. I always, I've worn many hats. I've been I've been the chair of a board. I've been on a lot of boards. I've been on a lot of development committees. When you're in fundraising, people always want you on a committee. But in all those volunteer roles, if I put my volunteer hat on right now, I've always been able to say, hey, I've got time to make 2 30-minute calls next month. Tell me who you want me to talk to. So make sure you're really tagging in folks right now to help you with that outreach. So people are hearing from you and you're listening and learning. It's really important. And just 2 examples here of the Neighborhood Birth Center. It's going to be the first BIPOC-led, owned and operated birth center in Boston. It's going to open next year. And during their capital campaign raise, and in the last few months in particular, as they've gotten closer to the construction and the build, it's been great for them to be in more frequent communication with these funding partners, and new partnerships are emerging. Financial services providers. So we at Wright Collective, which is the agency that I get to steward in the world, we do a lot of work helping nonprofits build relationships to the financial services sector. Again, it's not always comfortable for us, or we weren't trained in the nonprofit space to walk into the Edward Jones office or to call up the local Fidelity branch. And what do we say other than, we have an event coming up. Do you care about kids? Can you sponsor? So it's really important to find other things to say and other ways to have a dialogue with financial services providers. They are the ones that are a step or two away from these billions and billions, and actually trillions now, of dollars floating through this ecosystem. So I name that because it's networking. If you are that person in your organization that loves to go out and be in community around these folks, to ask new and different questions, to build relationship, go and do it, or identify who that is right now in your organization. I think it's really important because you should be, people will be asking. I recently had my own conversation with our financial planner about our kids' college funds, retirement, whatever, the yearly check-in. And I said to him, I was like, oh, I'm so interested right now. Like, what are you seeing in the landscape? And he was actually super insightful and was going to connect me to somebody who right now is overseeing some of the insurance dollars and where leftover funds from insurance policies are going. So if you're not talking to folks saying, hey, here's what we're doing, and where are you seeing money move? That's usually my opening question, is where are you seeing money move right now? And how could I connect with people who really care about some of the things happening in the landscape? That's very different than just immediately coming in like the nonprofit salesman to pitch them something transactional. So be mindful of that. And I just share these 2 examples: another birth center in Detroit, but also the domestic violence center that we helped open in central Maine. Again, just walking into the local Edward Jones branch and saying, hey, like I'm an expert on affordable housing. We've run several projects in the area. I thought you might want to know us if you have folks that are interested or concerned about the housing crisis right now. That's a very different conversation than, hi, I'm Alyssa Wright. I'm the director of development at Safe Voices, right? So I just think it's really important how we form these approaches, walking in and being a resource as much as also, being someone who's, mobilizing resources for your particular mission. People are looking for resources right now. They want to know not just money, they want to know any and everybody who's trying to solve some of these problems and navigate this very tricky landscape. All right, so I'm going to wrap up. We got two more slides, and then please do pepper the chat with some questions. So Ashley can tag me in to answer your questions today. But for particularly for corporate and nonprofit partnership ideas, the company presentations go a long way. If you have a relationship to Lush Cosmetics, Pampers, Stop and Shop, Hannaford Grocery Store, Burger King, whatever it is. If you have those corporate connections locally, whatever the industry is in your state or your city, say, who can we present in front of? Do you have an affinity group? Do you have a giving circle? Do you have a working parents group? When's your next executive board meeting? Would you be interested in hearing about what's happening around affordable housing? Be bold and ask to speak and share the important work that you're doing. I also think you should come up with a list of the needs around your strategic plan. So if you have a strategic plan right now and you're putting pivot points in it, think about the things you really need. Some of them I've listed below, and do that skills assessment. And you could even have a corporate partner help you with that. You might say like, hey, could you look at our strategic plan and identify a few things that you think, your company or some of the folks within your company could help us with. I think it's a great way also to just be in total alignment with your vision and where you're heading. Obviously, fundraising. I will say we're seeing a lot of passive fundraising now just because I think it's the summer months and folks are winding down a little bit. But who doesn't love the story in the newsletter about a kid doing a lemonade stand with his dad after they, heard about through IBM the new, initiative to help kids or whatever it is. So, fundraising activities, crowdfunding pages are big right now. Maybe, if somebody goes on vacation to I'll make a personal pitch if you decide to come to our beautiful rocky coastline here in Maine this summer. You could reach out to organizations here in the state and say, hey, I just want to do a crowdfunding page for your environmental group, while we're here, and we'll share pictures from our family vacation and talk about how we fell in love with the area and raise a couple $100 for your environmental organization. So again, ways that you can be in partnership around the fundraising are particularly important. And then I'll just say here that many of our clients need, we've been running on shoestring budgets and with scarcity mindset and small teams for a long time. And I know from doing a lot of trainings with Network for Good over the years, now part of Bonterra, that it is really important to take care of the small to mid-sized nonprofits. I've been grateful to be in this community because most of the organizations I meet after days like today come and say, we've been stuck at a $600,000 budget for a few years and we need some help to grow. Or, we're an emergent group, we're brand new, but we've got a lot of promise and we've got someone that just gave us 50 grand. What do we do next? So just think of all these things that, again, yes, you could pay consultants and contractors and build them out, but you can also get support from corporate partners, or you could get a skill-based volunteer to really knock this out of the park with you. CRM, tech, project management, setting up your Asana board for the first time, administrative support. I had a young woman a couple of years ago who literally just took like 40 of our spreadsheets for a client and aggregated and coded them all and made one, and it was magical. And I don't know where she came from, but she is a unicorn goddess that I want to work with forever and always. I don't even know how she did what she did. But I will say there are folks who can do that, like really skilled admin. And so think about those things that are helpful. We also had for a DV shelter, we had someone who just came and cleaned out the basement with a couple of their employees for the day. And it was so helpful. And we cleaned out the space, and then we were able to have a new space to run support groups. Because we had stuff from the 80s and the 90s in the basement. So just things to think about. Organizing. Again, I think it's so important right now to understand what partnerships can be forged around the door knocking, postcard mailing, advocacy work that can be done. And I think it's important to find your partners in that. Maybe you can partner with the local chapter of the ACLU and have a joint postcard mailing that goes out. That also generates your brand awareness, increases your brand awareness and identity. And then lastly, please, 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 as someone who really vulnerable overshare, has probably burst into tears and punched a pillow and screamed out into the ether of the ocean late at night after driving home from a fundraising event. Real stuff. Um, this is a really emotional time. People that we love are being harmed, communities that we care about, organizations that we've built for decades. Everything feels really fragile. So we need each other. And even if it's just getting a group of volunteers to write handwritten thank you notes to the staff once a month, even if it's getting the local pizza place to donate free pizza on a Friday. Um, you can tell that I really like pizza because I always mention that as a free thing. You can also do donuts, you can do Thai, you can do whatever food works for you. Whatever those things are right now, know that those are incredibly important. And if you as a leader are joining today and you feel like, oh my gosh, I really would love to handwrite letters to all 30 people on our staff or all 100 of our volunteers, but I don't have the capacity, I will also tell you, even just doing 5 or even just having somebody tag in to help you do that, it matters right now for us all to stay in this work together. So don't discount the emotional, community driven, that cultural, spiritual capital kind of support. It's really important right now. We actually have one of our clients that is supporting the LGBTQA community, the youth right now in New Hampshire and the Seacoast here in Maine, has a couple of the UU churches that are starting a prayer circle and doing some fundraising activities. And it's just nice to know that presence is there. Again, whatever fits into your culture and however you see fit, but that there is intention for us to build the world that we know is possible and to stay in this for the long haul. So here are some more briefings that we've done. I encourage you, we actually have one tomorrow with the Chicago Southside Birth Center. So if you're interested in what a funder briefing looks like, you could head to the Chicago Southside Birth Center's website. We have one happening. You can register for it on their page tomorrow at noontime. So if you're curious what a funder briefing looks like, we host them also with the Birth Center Equity Fund, on a quarterly basis. So there's some recorded there. I also wanted to drop in this idea of, we've partnered with filmmakers. Here, Life in the Doghouse was a film for an animal rescue organization. So there are other ways too right now, I think, just as you're kind of thinking about diversifying your funding, maybe there are films coming out that have social impact campaigns that you could attach yourselves to. We're looking at several documentary films that we know are in the works right now around human trafficking, around different issues like that, that maybe we could potentially talk to the social impact campaign folks that are going to be managing that afterwards to get some support from their funding and their programmatic needs. You get to be kind of an implementation partner and a funding partner. It's great. And then, oh my goodness, think about moving beyond philanthropy. Not completely, because I think that we should always work to ensure there's philanthropic practice in our society and that we do reallocate funds back to some of the communities that they need to serve, that they extracted them from, for sure. But I do think it's important for us to build our skill set, to be more resilient in times like these. And the organizations that I see being most resilient have a diversified philanthropic program. They are talking to the individual donors, the grant makers, the corporate brands, the grassroots fundraisers. They got the crowdfunding pages and the ambassadors up and running them. But also think about your own revenue generation and potentially accruing an asset. I know this isn't perfect for every organization, but maybe it's time you own your own building or you own your own land or you steward your own, your own entity in some capacity. I talked about the curriculum that some of our clients are now selling, or the books that they're writing, that they're having the proceeds go back to the organization. We have one client that started a line of magazines, and the line of magazines, the proceeds from that go back to the organization. So just get creative. Like, it is time to be creative. Like, let's do the thing. Really important to lean into that right now. And then talk about integrated capital or just learn more about it. Maybe bring the term integrated capital back to your board meeting in the next couple of days. Um, Talk about, would we ever take on a loan? Could we take on a loan? In what situation would we take on a loan? What other forms of debt might be accessible to us? There's something called the New Market Tax Program that some of our clients have taken advantage of. Maybe you want to research that as a little summer project and understand if it could ever be a fit for you. Program related investments, PRIs, recoverable grants. Start to have the conversation of how would it impact our mission if we started to generate revenue in a different way, or we accrued an asset, or we took on debt. If you haven't had that conversation yet, I would have it now, especially in the face of a lot of rebuilding or a lot of fragility as we move forward in this government landscape. And then last but not least, make it easy for donors to find you right now. Update your website regularly. Your SEO matters a ton. People should be able to put in Ohio Food Security Nonprofit, and you're on the top page if you're a food bank in Ohio. So check your SEO. Your website really matters. DAF holders, there's so much DAF money out there. Put DAF Direct on your website. Invest in press media and thought leadership. Put out that op-ed. Start a blog in the local newspaper. Call up the local newspaper, the local media, and make sure you're getting some press. It's really important right now. And then one thing that I just wanted to pop in is if you're not registered on Fidelity's database, Fidelity has billions and billions in DAF funding in their base. Head to the charitablegift.fidelity.com website for the nonprofit tab on that and get your organization enrolled in their EFT program so you can easily accept funds from Fidelity. And I'm sure there are integrations if you currently use a Bonterra technology. You could definitely reach out to your Bonterra rep to learn more about that. But go get that money. We run a DAF program. I won't rest on this a lot because I want to answer questions. But please do be in touch if you want to work with us in any capacity. So much gratitude to you all for all the work that you're doing in the world. You are my mentors and friends, and I so look up to you and appreciate everything you're doing right now to hold this world together. So stay in touch, reach out. And with that, Ashley, I'm happy to answer any questions that we have today in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, awesome. Alyssa, this was such a great session. I know you probably haven't had a chance to look into the chat, but there was even some collaboration going back and forth, people making connections, and lots of thanks in the chat as well. This was great. I
So
think it was
happy.
really, really eye-opening, especially about all the different capital types. I had never really thought about all the different ways that we can exchange capital. So yeah, this was a lovely, lovely session. I want to transition to Q&A. We have a couple of questions here in the Q&A box, but before we do that, folks, I want to launch another quick poll here. If you are interested in specifically maybe some of our fundraising tools or not, maybe some of our case management tools or grant making tools, I just launched another quick poll here. Please feel free to fill that out. And like I mentioned in the beginning, once we wrap up this afternoon, I will go ahead and have one of our colleagues reach out to you to continue those conversations, answer questions, and see how we might be able to help your organization. But while folks are filling that out, I know we're close to time here. We did have a question come through towards the beginning of the conversation. And I think this is more from like the grantor perspective, but they wanted to kind of hear maybe some of the challenges that you might know of that some organizations face in choosing the right grantee, and like making sure that they're using the funds correctly and monitoring those funds. So if you don't mind chatting about that with the little bit of time we have here, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things right now. One I would say is I really encourage any grant makers on the call to head to the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project. You can head to their website and learn a little bit about how to build that right relationship to grantees, how to identify grantees, how to pick your issue or your geography, your focus. I would just say that in this current landscape, I think the most important thing as you're sort of selecting grantees and doing due diligence is to really feel like the leadership, and I say leadership is not just an individual, but leadership like, the leadership of the organization, the people in the movement, right? The program directors, the board, everybody who's engaged in it. If you meet with leaders, because you should definitely meet with organizations in your area and get to know them or around the issue that you're interested in, I would meet with them and I would keep asking yourself, are these people committing their lives to solving this problem? I feel like if someone is committing their life to solving a problem, you can then start to say, okay, well, what do you want to measure and evaluate? What's important for you to think about around impact and take notes? And then I think leaning into resources like the Trust Based Philanthropy Project, your local community foundation, experts that you can find in the area with both lived experience or academic or intellectual expertise is super important. But I would just say get out there, start a listening tour, pick 10 organizations in the area and just, start chatting with them. So I think that's really important is just get started. And to be honest with you right now, I don't think there isn't a single issue when it comes to basic needs that you could be wrong in investing in. People need food, people need housing, people need jobs, people need support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just put into the chat, folks, the link to the Fidelity EFT registration. So
Oh,
feel free to use that link as well. But while we're at time here, folks, thank you so much for your engagement this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all of the chats and the questions. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to every question here, but we definitely appreciate your engagement. It always makes for a great session. And I love seeing the connections happening in the chat. That makes my heart so happy. And Alyssa, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Like I said, this was such a great session. Lots of thanks rolling into the chat. I think a lot of takeaways for folks to leave with today. And hopefully easing a little bit uncertainty that I know a lot of us are feeling on the line in regards to federal funding. But with that, folks, we thank you again so much for your time. And like I mentioned, we will send out the recording to this session next week. So be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, have a great rest of your afternoon, and we hope to see you at our next session. Bye, everyone.